we didn't quite cover it, but Rick, maybe sort of when you start talking about that, it made me think a little bit about, one of the use cases we talked about, and whether it's MVP or not, it's a separate issue, but it's like, I'm off on PTO for a week and I come back and like, what is my team kind of done? Kind of like, what do I need to kind of be up to speed on, or kind of what, it's like being able to kind of summarize, not really summarize even, but like somehow roll it up and look at like the notebooks for the last week or last 2 weeks or something like that.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, at least in concept. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, what that. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But instead of having to pick an individual, like this, because that's like picking an individual log versus like kind of rolling it up. Because it'd be kind of cool, like the first use case is like I'm on PTO, like kind of what happened. The second use case is like I'm a manager, I have 5 teams, like roll it up for me. Like at a week view or a month view or a quarter view, or just even as an org, like, hey, we're going to go do our board meeting. We're going to kind of give an update of what we did in the last quarter. Like, what are the highlights? Obviously they don't care about the detail, but like what could be these highlights, if you will. That's another kind of similar, but similar use case, I guess I should say.
Right. And we had talked about allowing that. We had talked about allowing teams, not just with the status indicator, but also with like a milestone, like, hey, this was a big milestone, or this is important. And those things would get, a preference on someone who's trying to find logs. Imagine if you're looking at a timeline like this or something with a list or cards of these notebooks, and it's like, hey, you need to look at these because the team said this day was important, or there's something in this day that happened that's really important.
Yeah, like maybe there was a big launch or something, and the team wanted to like, hey, we just launched, data manager or whatever, and you could like signal that somehow, and that would then show up special as as a significant event on the timeline.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I do remember in the notes up above, one of the items was kind of that while you were away feature, right? So whether it's from your last login, or if you left the daily and then came back to it, it would kind of roll up, hey, these are the specific activities that happened while you weren't looking at this. And I think that would just kind of extend to what you're talking about, Jeff, is like, if you haven't logged into Pinpoint for a few days, that roll up would just, that while you were away would kind of highlight that activity to help understand, and get you caught up. The other thing that was on there that I don't think you mentioned, maybe I missed it, was who's on PTO. Because that's something I've heard from several customers when we talk about, some of these new concepts is, I want to understand, who's on PTO this week or who has PTO planned. And then if we have issues assigned to somebody that's on PTO, making sure that that's kind of front and center, right? Because we obviously want to complete the work that we scheduled for the iteration, but if we realize it's something stale and it's not getting worked on because somebody's on PTO, a lot of times that gets overlooked and causes a problem. So is that something we think would get into the MVP, or is that maybe phase 2?
So the scheduling thing, hold on, I'll scroll up here and see here. Let's see. Scheduling and planning, next version. Haha, there you go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I guess just maybe to pull some people out, I mean, like Nick or Pedro or Keegan or some of the, Robin or some of the other sort of, I mean, what do you guys think? I'm kind of curious about the individual dev use case as much as sort of, I feel like we kind of understand the sort of the team lead manager, exec type views of these, but like, what is the kind of, individual person that has to work on a sprint and has shit they got to do every day? Like, what are your guys' view on some of this?
So to be fair, there's just like a lot of stuff you just kind of explained through, and it's a little hard for me to really imagine what it's gonna like actually look like. I don't
I feel the same way.
The like the stuff that I would actually like to know. Like, I mean, I like to keep track of what people are doing. Like, I read the data engineering, like I read their like guild minutes or whatever, because like, I'm not going to spend an hour going to their, like, listening in on their meetings, but I kind of want to know what they're up to, because, it's like sort of relevant. And like, I just sort of, like to know what's going on. And so So something like that would be useful for me, just as like, you know, I'm kind of a busybody and want to see what people are up to.
That's cool. So you would see the value even in other teams as potential log or other guild logs that just from the lurking kind of knowledge aspect as much as it is like, you know, participating in that sense. Because that brings up an interesting use case is like right now we're sort of focused it really around a team, but is there a kind of this ability to create one of these things for people that aren't on a physical team, but maybe this virtual team like we have these sort of matrix, right, of, you know, guilds and teams, right? So, you know, have you guys thought of that, Rick?
So no, not as far as guilds go. That's an interesting idea. That we definitely talked about and have the desire to be able to at somebody and ping somebody and bring them into the notebook for them to comment or talk or drop stuff in. But we didn't talk about guild type things. That's an interesting idea.
And maybe that's just a higher level concept we need to bring to Pinpoint around these sort of virtual teams, if you will. I mean, I don't want to call them virtual, but just at a conceptual level, like, you know, different groupings of people, which, you know, in our world are just teams. Like we don't ultimately care, right? But just a little different than kind of your primary team. There's data model issues you'd have to really sort out to make this work, but got to put that aside for a moment, just conceptually. Like, because in our world, like we would have teams like the Bolts and Nans of the world, and then you could have our guilds, which would also show a slice of our data, right, and a slice of like how we work together because we work across data engineering or data science or app engineering, et cetera. The guild slice, if you will, and maybe in because this is to you know, and I'm only participating in one, but like in the data engineering guild, Andrew does a really good job of like keeping a Notion document and keeping a set of Jira's on what the guild tasks are and what the guild is working through and all that. But again, that would potentially get lost in this scenario if we couldn't bring that in. It'd be cool to like bring that in because we do have, and I'm sure every other guild does the same thing or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So would it just be a just another team, and you can belong to more than one team?
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was wondering if there's like a primary team is kind of your work team. And again, this is probably a longer conversation, but like at a conceptual level, those are just sort of your primary team, which is kind of where you sit. And is there this like quote virtual team? Because you can imagine like we've had this request coming from customers. They'd like to see like put everybody that are Java developers or all the front end developers or all, you know, kind of independent of where they sit in the org structure, like, you know, more skills based and create these virtual teams. Almost like a filter, you know, anybody that has this sort of capability, I want to see that. And then I want to see the data, you know, or even sort of different groupings based on that, which is kind of a little bit like our guilds, right? Which is it's just sort of a virtual group of people.
Yeah. I mean, does a team really need to be more than just, you know, like a subset of people?
Yes. Exactly. I mean, ideally, we'd have a hierarchy, right? Because your team could be hierarchical and you can make any structure you want. We don't care. It's just for us, like you said, it's just a group of people.